Welcome to Decoding SaaS, a podcast where we talk to founders and industry experts to deep dive into strategies that help them build and sustain a 10 million ARR business. A podcast that will provide actionable tactics and strategies from the minds of SaaS professionals.
Welcome everybody to Hello everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We have Arian here from IgnitePost, and we're going to be talking about different things when it comes to the psychology of marketing, specifically for SaaS startups. So welcome to the podcast, Arian.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to chat through all things psychology.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to give a quick intro? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about your company?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Arian Radman. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, and I run a company called IgnitePost. And essentially what we do at IgnitePost is we're a service that helps brands create magic moments for their customers. And we do that in a very unique way. So our service is actually part hardware, part software, but we enable brands to send real pen and ink handwritten notes to their customers in a way that surprises and delights their customers. So on the software side, we have a nice software suite that will integrate nicely for easy setup and kind of meet you where you are. So it integrates into CRM systems or e-commerce platforms. And then on the hardware side, we actually have robotics that will hold real ballpoint pens and write out real handwritten notes to give warmth to each note, also to give us some scalability. And when we put the two together, you get these perfectly timed and crafted moments that really drive users to action. So really excited to and the whole psychology behind it as well is super important. It's kind of two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing about founding stories. So what led you to start a company doing what it does?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is actually my second business that I've started. So prior to IgnitePost, I actually started a company called CoachUp. And basically the premise there is we were a private sports coaching marketplace, connecting athletes and private coaches in every sport all across the nation. And so we had this idea of personalization, right? You get the best results when you have one-on-one, personalized instruction. And so, started that business, ran it for about 5 years. And then after I left, I was kind of thinking about, what I wanted to do next. And this kind of theme of personalization is a common thread that kind of runs through, my background and, kind of what I did with CoachUp and also now what I do with IgnitePost. And the reason why I decided to do what we do at IgnitePost is I tried to take a look at the current state of the world and of brands and how they're going to be interacting and kind of working with their customers. And what I noticed is that, a couple different trends. So one, this influx of a lot of digital communication, right? We get a lot of digital communication, whether it's digital ads, emails, push notifications, SMS, you name it. And I didn't see that trend slowing down. So what I said is, if I'm a brand and I'm really trying to connect with my customers and develop that personal connection, what am I going to do? What are the tools in my toolkit that I'm going to be able to leverage, or should I leverage? And that's really, when I kind of did a little bit of introspection into who we are as human beings, to figure out, well, what do humans respond to? How should things work? What should we do? And so that's what set me down the path to creating IgnitePost. And the reason why we decided to do what we do at IgnitePost, which is enabling brands to send real penned notes to their customers, is because that's one of the biggest things you can do to really establish and deepen a relationship with anybody. So, but the whole idea was, if I'm a brand and I need to do this in a business setting, I need scalability, right? It's not scalable to imagine that I'm going to be able to send a lot of handwritten notes to, everybody if I'm sitting down and literally writing them myself. So we basically combined some software, some hardware, some technology, put it together. And that's kind of what set me down this path of IgnitePost and why we got here doing what we're doing and why IgnitePost exists in its current form.
Awesome. So I'd love to hear about where you procured the machine to actually do it. Do you have to fly to China or make a post, or how did you figure that out?
No. So I always bill ourselves as a software company. So we did all of the software, and that's kind of like really the strength of our company is the software. So integrating with various platforms. On the heart, my background actually also is in software. So I was a software engineer for 10, 11 years prior to starting IgnitePost. So that's where my background is. So I kind of stuck to where my strong suit is. So we did all of the software, both on the back-end side, so our fulfillment side, as well as all the integrations that I spoke about. And then we actually work with a hardware manufacturer that's based in Virginia to actually build the actual physical robots. The whole idea is, stick to what you're good at, right? There's a reason why Southwest Airlines doesn't build its own airplanes. You have to stick to what you're good at. So, our whole thing is about being able to create these, perfectly timed, crafted moments that really deepen relationships. And that's really where we want to focus. So all of our software and all the integrations that we have are really designed around that. And then we lean on the hardware manufacturer that we're partnered with to really, help us with the hardware side.
That's incredible, man. So about talking about psychology and customers at the end of the day, I'd love to hear about how you got your first customer. And what was that buyer journey like? And how did you leverage psychology, if you did at all, to actually close your first customer?
Yeah. So, funny enough, we actually used our own product, and we still use our own product a lot right now. But the beauty of having a real physical product that people respond to is when you put it in front of them, they respond to it. So that's really how we got our first customers, is we sent out our own handwritten notes, because when we first started, we were trying to, like any business, you really, the challenge is figuring out what you don't want to do, not what you want to do. So with our business, you can make an argument that almost any company out there could use our service in some way, shape, or form. But obviously, we can't do everything for everybody. So we wanted to really kind of figure out what are the markets that we should really focus in, where are the markets that this really works well. So that's what we did. So it was actually a lot of testing. But to your question, we got our first customers by literally sending our own handwritten note campaigns out to brands that we thought would be a good fit, just to literally get our foot in the door and open the conversation. So that's really where some of our first brands came from. And right now, really our biggest markets, you can kind of split them up into 3 different categories, but they're generally speaking e-commerce, the insurance space, as well as nonprofit and fundraising space. Those are kind of like our 3 main markets that we play in. But it was really a matter of figuring out who we wanted to target and then doing some outreach with a handwritten note. And it's funny, you talk about psychology, when you put something in front of them, in front of a prospect, you say, hey, here's our product. I would love to connect with you. Give me a quick call. By the way, this worked on you. Obviously, you opened it and you're reading it and we're having this kind of, conversation. It was almost automatic that people would say, okay, well, I at least have to pick into this a little bit and at least give them a call, or at least, jump into a conversation. So that's how we got our first customers. And that is still a big part of our strategy now, of how we work with brands and how we do outreach now.
I love that, man. I love that you're dog fooding your own product and actually using that to actually sell to customers. There's obviously no better way than doing that. I think Costco might have, perfected that art of sampling things and doing that. So that's really great. So when it comes to psychology, right? One is kind of talking and listening to podcasts and seeing how other people have done it, and the reality is implementation. So we can talk about all these fancy things, but it's like, oh, dude, I need to build a customer experience. So
Right.
when founders are thinking about it, let's say the 0 to 1 journey, when they are actually getting off the ground, where they're looking for product market fit, what are some things that they should definitely look at, and what are some essentials that they should consider from a customer journey perspective, and where can they leverage psychology and human behavior there?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and there's a lot to kind of unpack in there. But the couple of layers to that is, obviously with a customer journey, number one, you have to figure out a way to actually cut through the digital noise that we were talking about earlier and actually reach your customer, because it doesn't matter what your experience is. If they don't actually experience it, it's not going to be effective. So that is always kind of hurdle number one, is that's one part of the whole equation. The second part is coming up with a strategy, right, for how you want to craft the customer journey. And there's a lot of things. I'll get into that in a second. And then the third is worrying about scalability, right? So that's kind of like the trifecta that I typically, that we work with brands and kind of preach that kind of trifecta is, you need three things. You've got to figure out how to cut through the noise and actually reach your customer. Two, you need to craft a strategy that works, typically following psychology and how we operate as humans. And then three, once you have those two, you got to figure out how to scale it, because if you can't scale it, you're not going to go anywhere. So that's kind of like the 1, 2, 3 step. In terms of that strategy, there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of leveraging psychology. And so, one of the things that we preach a lot and we work with brands to do is to develop a strategy that follows what we call peak end theory. So this is the idea that along the course of a journey or an event, humans have a limited memory span, right? We can't remember everything. So as humans, what we do is we pick certain moments to remember, and then that's how we actually remember our experience with something, whether that's a customer journey, whether that's going to an event. And so the whole idea behind peak end theory basically says, as humans, what we do is we pick one moment that is very highly memorable along the journey, typically something that's very, very, joyful, like joy-filled, or it could be something that's not joy-filled, that's like a terrible experience, one way or the other, but it just stands out in your mind. And then we remember the end of our journey, the end of the event, right? That's the whole idea behind, if you've ever gone to a concert or if you've ever gone to like a festival, that's the reason why they save the headliner for the last act, and they don't open with it, because everybody remembers the very last thing. And that's kind of, what you want to do. So using that in mind, that's part of the strategy that we typically like to work with brands to do. We say, okay, think about the course of the customer journey. Where are moments that have high value for your brand? And how can we inject a very joyous, like an intensely joyous moment along that customer journey? And that typically is kind of like, it informs the strategy. Now that takes many, many forms. There's a lot of examples of kind of how we've done that, but generally that's the strategy and the concept. And then same thing applies to the end, right? If you have an idea of, okay, here is when a customer journey might end, or a customer might see like the end of their journey, that also is a moment that you can actually go and do the same thing and inject a lot of joy and actually get them to not end their journey there, to continue either using your brand or using your business. So that's kind of one strategy that we've employed with a lot of success.
Yeah, I love that. So when it comes to specifically for SaaS companies, when people are interacting with a machine, so how do you recommend that people insert that joy? Is it through interaction design? A lot of apps that have cool interactions that come up, or what are those joyous moments that you have seen work successfully to continue moving the customer through the buyer's journey?
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple examples. So one, obviously with using our product, there's a lot of examples of connecting with your customer as either the founder or like the face of the brand. And so, step one, pick a moment that means a lot has a lot of value to you as a brand. That typically comes down, if I'm talking about, let's say the e-commerce space, everybody really wants good, fresh, positive reviews on a regular basis. So that's something that we see a lot is, okay, as a brand, how can I inject a lot of joy after a first purchase so that I can guarantee that somebody comes back and writes me a great review and does this on a regular basis? And so what we do is kind of use some of those kind of psychological theories there to set up an automation where somebody would actually get a real handwritten card from the founder of the brand or the owner of the brand after a certain purchase is made. And that does a couple things. So one, it cuts through the noise like that we talked about earlier. And two, it connects with the person on a kind of individual one-on-one basis and shows that there's an actual human behind the brand. And that kind of combination of, cutting through the noise, showing that there's an actual human behind the brand makes that person, injects that joyous moment, right? Because you're not connected with just this amorphous brand. You're connected with, Joe at, ABC Inc. or wherever. So, that's kind of one example. The second is actually, there's a lot of research that shows that if you show that there is a human behind the brand, it will lead to more spending, more loyalty, and just general higher customer lifetime value. And so any way that you can show that there's a human behind the brand will help you, right? And if we kind of reverse and go back in time, about 100 years or so, it's easy to see why, right? 100 years ago, basically what happened is you typically, if I was a buyer, I would purchase whatever I'm purchasing from an artisan that typically, made whatever the thing was that I was purchasing. If I was purchasing a chair or a furniture or something, right? I would actually go and actually talk to the maker, like the person that made the thing that I'm buying. Fast forward now, everything feels like it's very, very removed from that kind of personal connection. You can hop on Amazon and buy a blender, right? And never talk to, sometimes you don't even know the company that made the blender, let alone the person or the people that went into, the work put into actually making that product. And same thing like all over. So, speaking to that kind of psychological journey, how can we inject some joy? People get joy as humans. We get joy from connecting with other humans. And so if you can find those moments and kind of figure out, how do I surface the people behind the company and actually show that there's other humans that, the work that they put in produce the thing that you're buying, that's something that we've seen brands have a lot of success with.
Okay, awesome. So when it comes to product-led growth startups, right? So where they're not really talking to an account executive, or there's not a customer support or even a success manager that they may be interacting with, how do you recommend that they help close the customer? And then how do you recommend that they continue building a relationship or maintaining a relationship? Of course, handwritten notes is one way of doing that. So along with that, what are some other tools and tactics that you have seen, specifically with B2B SaaS companies, that have been successful to close a customer and then to continue retaining them?
Yeah, well, so on the closing customer side, everything always comes down to just how helpful you can be, right? So, I would say the biggest piece of advice I've ever gotten and kind of employed in my own approach to sales is to actually not treat it like sales, is to actually just really more or less treat it like a consultation, and to approach the sale as basically, hey, we're two parties here just trying to do some problem solving and figure out a good solution together. And if we can do that, great, we'll be a good fit. If not, might not be a good fit, right? So I've always found that having that mindset and that mentality really kind of shifts everything, right? It shifts the way that you approach customers. It also shifts the conversation that you're having, right? That's the whole adage that people don't want to be sold to, right? They don't want to buy things. They don't want to be sold to, number one. And number two, people don't want to buy things. They want a solution, right? They're looking for solutions. And so that's like the number one thing that I would say. And that actually applies both for the sales process before you actually get people in your door, as well as once they're through the door, right? They're still looking for that solution. And so if you can shift the mindset in your business where both your sales reps as well as any account executives that you have that are, connecting with folks on an ongoing basis, if they're not thinking about, basically just how do we deliver the product or how do we get more, revenue out of this customer, instead it's about what are the actual customer pain points here? How are they actually using us? What's the value that they see us providing? And how do we position that and use that to come up with a better solution for the customer? That's always been the way that I've seen it work. And that generates more sales and helps you get more sales through the door. So it helps you close better. And once they come through the door, they trust you because they know that you're a solutions provider, not, an organization that just wanted to sell them a piece of software or sell them something. And they're more likely to work with you on an ongoing basis. So that's my biggest takeaway from being in the industry a bit and kind of figuring out how to approach things.
I absolutely love that, man. Consultative approach, focus on solutions. And I think when it goes to writing copy and all those things, those are very critical as well. So the way that you are even chatting with a customer, it should be focused on solutions rather than how your application actually works. So coming back to handwritten notes, would love to understand the ROI. So when you are talking to customers, do you have any metrics that you typically share when it comes to ROI and the impact that it has had on people's businesses?
For sure, yeah. And so I can actually break those down into two different buckets. One is kind of generally speaking, general ROI. And then two is, we do have specific case studies because, the beautiful thing about our product is you can kind of use it across the spectrum, right? You can use it for acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and based on your use case, you're obviously going to get, widely different results. But to kind of speak in more generalities first, and then we'll dive deep. But generally speaking, when you send someone a handwritten note, we get compared to mediums like email and just normal direct mail a lot. So if you're comparing IgnitePost or a handwritten note like this to something like generic direct mail that arrives and most people open their mail over their trash bin, and it's like a race for how fast you can throw it away. But generally, we perform about 10 times better than direct mail. So whatever call to action it is that you want that person to take, generally speaking, you're going to see about a 10x improvement using a handwritten note instead of direct mail. Reason being, like I spoke about before, the oft-quoted stat is about 20% of direct mail, that kind of like mass marketing mail, gets thrown away without even being looked at. So right away, you're throwing about 20% of your budget just in the trash, just because people aren't going to look at it. So that's part of we talked about cutting through the noise. That's part of the challenge, is just getting someone to give you the time of day and open the thing that you sent to them. So that's kind of the comparison when it comes to direct mail. When it comes to email, it's actually even better. So we perform anywhere from 20 to 30 times better. Again, depending on the use case, depending on the quality of the folks that your recipients, the quality of your list, but anywhere between 20 to 30 times better. And of course, right, that's not crazy to know. Like, what's the average open rate for email campaigns these days? You're doing good if you get a 3% conversion rate or something like that. So it's very low. So again, assuming that you have a good quality list, those are kind of some general stats that we normally see. We do have some specific case studies, and I'm happy to kind of chat through there where you can actually see the power of kind of what we're doing. Going back to a couple of the things that we talked about earlier in the podcast. So some of the use cases that we have seen folks put together are, following that peak end theory rule. One of the most common things we see is brands will insert a, kind of preemptive anti-churn handwritten note in their flow. We see this a lot with folks that are subscription-based businesses. So as an example, we work with a brand, Pure Plates, and basically they're a healthy meal delivery service, healthy meal subscription. And essentially what they notice is, okay, people are typically in our subscription for about 7 months before they churn. That's kind of like the average churn point. So what we did is we actually inserted this really personalized note from the founder, from Sean, the founder, at month 6, and basically said, hey, thanks so much for being an awesome part of our community. You're one of our VIP members. Here is an offer for 20% off your next 3 months of your subscription. So basically they preempted the subscription churn. And then when the people took advantage of the offer, it jumped them over their churn point. So they immediately raised their LTV, and they saw about a 68% conversion rate. So 68% of the people that they reached out to opted to take advantage of that offer and jump over the typical churn point. So huge, or I think they had about 11x ROI. So, you can get some pretty awesome ROIs. So that's one example. Other examples that we have, actually, we talk a lot about psychology and like understanding your customer. Some of the best things that we've ever done have come from working with brands to really understand their customer and their customer's behavior. So, we recently did a win-back campaign for a cable company called Point Broadband. And it was interesting. We actually split it into 2 different phases. Phase 1 was basically discovery. So all we did in phase 1 is we reached out, we used a handwritten note to do it, but we reached out to customers who had canceled their subscription. And obviously we wanted to win them back, but we didn't give them any offer. We didn't try to win them back. Basically what we said is, hey, you're no longer in a subscription with us. We want to learn a little bit about why. Like, what was the reason that you decided to cancel? Give us some feedback. And what we did is we collected the feedback there, and we actually figured out that there was only about five reasons total that everybody that gave us feedback, you could put them in one of those 5 buckets. And then when we talked to Point Broadband, they actually said, well, we actually have improved almost all of these. So then what we did is in phase 2, we used that feedback to send out win-back notes, and we basically spoke to those cancellation reasons and how the company had improved all of those things. And they were able to win back, I think, 2% of folks in the first bucket, and I think it doubled. So just by using some information as to why people actually canceled, they won 4 to 5% back in the second phase, which was awesome. Because remember, with cable, it involves like actual hardware. So people, to me, that was like mind-boggling. It's not just like, okay, here, I'm just going to go sign up for the SaaS business. They literally had to return their old hardware, get new hardware, go through an installation process. So it's like quite a painful thing to switch. I don't know if you remember ever switching cable providers, but it's not quick or easy. So the fact that they were able to like win back a decent percentage of these folks was awesome for them.
That's incredible, man. I really appreciate the insights that you have shared with us today. And where would be the best place for people to reach you? Is there an email or LinkedIn? What's the best place for people to reach you?
Yeah, well, so the first thing I'll say is if anybody's interested, if you just hit our site, ignitepost.com, and if you want one of our robots to write you a sample and mail it to you, there's a button that says send me a sample. So hit our website, ignitepost.com, hit the free sample button. That's the easiest way to get in touch with us. I'm available on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'll pass you my links and everything so that you can post those. But honestly, the easiest and coolest thing is for folks to just go and have one of our robots write them a letter.
Yeah, no, I see that link on your website right now. So awesome. Really appreciate your time here. Thank you so much for you sharing your insights again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Thank you.